gospel lesson for today is from St. Luke's Gospel, the 9th chapter, beginning at verse 51. When the days drew near for Jesus to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers ahead of him. On their way, they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. But they did not receive him, because his face was set towards Jerusalem. And when his disciples, James and John, saw this rejection, they said, "Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" But Jesus turned and rebuked them. And then they went on to another village. As they were going along the road, someone said to him, "I will follow you wherever you go." And Jesus said to him, "Foxes have holes and birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head." To another he said, "Follow me." But he said, "Lord, let me first go and bury my father." But Jesus said to him, "Let the dead bury their own dead. But as for you, go and proclaim the kingdom of God." And another said, "I will follow you, Lord, but let me first say farewell to those at my home." And Jesus said to him, "No one who puts a hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom of God." Here ends the lesson. Well, recovering from surgery is mostly a lot of sleep and nagging people around you to get things for you. I think you can talk to Susan about that if you want the whole gory story. And I heard from the nurses at St. V's Hospital where the surgery was done. They were out in the room talking among themselves, not realizing that the observer of all stories and behavior was lying in the bed right near the door. And one nurse said to the other, "Men are such babies." Now, this was about 14 hours after my surgery. I think the first 24 hours you should be allowed to be a baby. I mean, I don't know. And if I wanted to get up and do anything, they would have slapped me down anyway, so I don't know what they were talking about. Men are such babies. I don't understand. One of you go and get me some water or something? No, never mind. But anyway, the other thing about recovery is you get to catch up on a lot of stuff that you wanted to read or study or and especially pay more attention to the news. I don't usually get to pay attention to that, but those of you who have DirecTV or cable know that you can get the BBC News as well as CNN and all the other news channels. And so it's kind of interesting to watch those and compare and see the stories that they're doing. And of course, the top story, which we've all been thinking about and worrying about, is this oil tragedy in the Gulf of Mexico and the attempts to stop the flow of oil into the ocean. So far, after how many days it is, it must be almost 70 days, I think, still unsatisfactory. And as the story's going along, what we know about what's happening has changed. I think you've probably all noticed that. We expected there were so many gallons coming out, then we're told, no, it isn't that number, it's this, and it's been a little confusing. And there were lots of personal stories. The most personal and the most dire, of course, were stories of the families of the men who died in the explosion on that oil rig and what their families were now dealing with. And stories told by those who survived, who described what they felt and saw happen on that oil rig. And they're the stories of the BP executives, although it's hard to find very much sympathy for what's going on with them. And they're, of course, being challenged in ways they never expected would be part of their job description. And then the people who live in the Gulf, of course, and I kind of like hearing that southern drawl among many people. And some of the fishermen down there, not only are they suffering, but they also have an interesting perspective on things. And I'm amazed, some of them have been able to keep their humor, their sense of humor about things, realizing that they're just going to have to be patient and wait until things can be done better. And then all the people who have come out, which I think is fascinating, with ideas about how to clean up the Gulf and the oil spill. And there's been hundreds of ideas. Even some Hollywood types have come and testified before Congress about these things. And there are those who are just going off to help clean up. You see once again the episodes of people washing birds and other kinds of sea life in order to try to save them. There's one special character in this drama for me that I've paid a lot of attention to and really appreciate, and that is Admiral Thad Allen, who is the Coast Guard guy who's in charge of the whole thing. You know, you think of people, you say, if you could have dinner with any 2 or 3 people, who would you like to have dinner with? You know, Tom Cruise or, I don't know, beautiful women, handsome men, politicians, not so much politicians, but at any rate, Thad Allen is one guy I'd like to have dinner with. I'd like to hear him talk and see what his story is like. Here's a guy who is, you talk about being in the hot seat, he's in charge of this whole thing. And he's got to talk to everybody, environmental people and the BP people and obviously the President of the United States and everyone else, Congress, about how this thing is being managed. And when you see him in the press conferences, the amount of knowledge this guy has gained about this is amazing. And can you imagine the stress? Some of you who are still working, you go to work and you say, oh boy, the stress sometimes just gets me. I can't even imagine the stress this guy is under. And he's ready to retire, you know. He could have said to the president, let me just kind of cruise on out here, you know. I put in all my time. You see all the ribbons he has? He's a big guy. He could use a bigger jacket to handle all the ribbons. But no, he took the job on. He had experience with Katrina, cleaning up when FEMA let us down. And so he stays and does what he believes is his duty. He's a very impressive, intelligent, and straight-talking kind of guy. And it's not hard to understand what he's driving at when he talks to us. Well, there was a CNN reporter who followed him around for several days and sat in on a lot of his meetings and kept the same schedule he kept. And in one scene, they're driving off in a car, and she asked him a question. I don't exactly remember what the question was, but I remember his answer. He said, "I'm careful who rents space in my head." That is a wonderful saying. I'm careful who rents space in my head. I don't think any one of us has trouble understanding what that means, because all of us have had those times when we've rent space in our head that we shouldn't have rent out. That we've got something going on or something bothering us or something we're thinking about spending time on that we should have put aside or left alone completely. And if you can't remember that saying, write it down, because that's an idea that every human being needs. I'm careful who rents space in my head.